It is 2009, and inside a dimly lit corporate boardroom in Ann Arbor, Michigan, executives are staring at a piece of paper that should have destroyed their company forever. Focus group results had just come in, and the feedback was brutal. The crust tastes like cardboard. The sauce tastes like processed ketchup. This isn't real pizza. It's a hot circle of garbage. Most corporate executives would have buried those reports, fired the research firm, and launched a glossy, fake marketing campaign to distract the public. Instead, Domino's did something so reckless, so financially insane, that Wall Street analysts thought the leadership team had completely lost their minds. They bought million-dollar primetime television slots, looked 50 million consumers dead in the eye, and admitted on national television that their pizza tasted terrible. They literally showed images of their own product, alongside real customer comments calling it disgusting. It was a suicidal move on paper. Yet, what happened next triggered one of the greatest financial turnarounds in modern business history, outperforming tech giants like Apple, Google, and Amazon over the following decade. Because behind that shocking confession was a calculated, highly strategic business pivot, and if you look beneath the surface, you discover that Domino's didn't just fix a recipe. They fundamentally re-engineered the mechanics of fast food ownership, digital customer acquisition, and corporate risk. By the end of this video, you will see how a brand almost wiped out by its own product turned a public humiliation into a multi-billion-dollar empire, and why the secret to their success had almost nothing to do with pizza. To understand how this redemption strategy worked, you first have to understand why the old business model was collapsing from the inside out. Back in the early 2000s, Domino's was running the standard fast food playbook. They focused entirely on speed, driving down costs, and expanding store count as fast as humanly possible. Their promise was simple: 30 minutes or it's free. It was a brilliant operational trick for the 1980s and 90s, but it created a hidden financial trap. To meet that 30-minute deadline, stores had to shave off every single second from the cooking process. They switched to pre-made, mass-manufactured crusts, cheap canned sauce, and low-grade cheese that wouldn't spoil under heat lamps. The pizza became an afterthought, a cheap commodity designed strictly for fast transport, and for a long time, it worked, until consumer behavior shifted. By 2008, local artisanal pizzerias were booming. Gourmet options were everywhere, and consumers refused to pay hard-earned money for tasteless food. Sales started plunging across thousands of stores. Store owners, people who had poured their entire life savings into buying a franchise, were standing in empty kitchens, watching their daily profit margins evaporate. Take a store owner named Dave, who worked 70 hours a week, mortgaged his house to buy a location, and suddenly watched his weekly revenue drop by 30%. He was paying rent, paying electricity, paying wages, but the customers simply stopped calling. Corporate was feeling the pressure, but unlike Dave, corporate had a secret financial cushion that kept them insulated from total ruin. And this brings us to the first massive open loop in the Domino's system. How does corporate stay profitable, even when their own store owners are going broke? To see the answer, you have to look at the contract signed between corporate and the franchise operator. When Dave opened his store, he wasn't just buying the right to use the logo. He was entering a structured financial relationship where corporate gets paid first, regardless of whether Dave makes a single penny of profit. Corporate collects a mandatory royalty fee, roughly 5.5%, off the total gross sales. Notice that key word, gross, not net profit, but gross revenue. If Dave takes in $10,000 in a week, corporate immediately takes $550 off the top, even if Dave's operating expenses were $11,000 that week. On top of that, another 4% goes into a centralized advertising fund. So almost 10 cents of every dollar coming into the register vanishes before the local store owner can pay for cheese, pay for electricity, or pay their workers. When store sales were dropping in 2008, corporate was still collecting millions in royalties, but the individual owners were suffocating if the owners went under. The entire system would collapse like a house of cards. Corporate realized they couldn't just tell owners to work harder. They had to burn down their old business identity and execute a radical transformation. This leads us right into the heart of the 2009 turnaround case study, the pizza turnaround campaign. Corporate didn't just tweak the sauce. They completely scrapped their 49-year-old recipe from scratch. They spent months in test kitchens, re-engineering the dough, changing the garlic butter crust, switching to whole milk mozzarella, and sourcing fresh herbs for the sauce. Then came the legendary transparency campaign. They filmed documentary-style commercials showing their own chefs looking ashamed, reading mean tweets, and promising to do better. It was psychological genius. When a giant corporation admits a flaw, consumers instantly lower their guard. Curiosity spiked. Millions of people who hadn't ordered Domino's in 5 years picked up the phone just to see if it was actually better, or if it was all a marketing gimmick. Order volume surged by double digits in the very first quarter after the campaign launched. Dave's store went from an empty kitchen on a Tuesday night to a chaotic, non-stop wall of ticket orders. Sales exploded. But here is the catch. And this is where most business analysts get it wrong. A great recipe can get a customer to buy once, but it cannot build a $40 billion corporate giant. The real revolution. The move that truly transformed Domino's into a Wall Street darling wasn't what happened in the kitchen. It was what happened inside their IT department, while every other fast food chain viewed themselves as a restaurant business. Domino's made a silent, radical shift. They started acting like a Silicon Valley software company that just happened to sell hot dough. In 2010, while competitors were still relying on landline phone calls and clunky websites, Domino's poured tens of millions of dollars into developing proprietary digital ordering infrastructure. They launched the iconic Domino's Pizza Tracker, a visual interface that allowed customers to follow their pizza through every single stage, from prep to oven, to quality check, to delivery. It seemed like a simple, fun gadget for the consumer. In reality, it was an audience retention masterpiece grounded in behavioral psychology. By giving the customer total visibility, they eliminated the anxiety of waiting, made the process interactive, and built an addictive digital habit. Next, they launched Anywhere Ordering, allowing people to buy a pizza via text message, smartwatches, smart speakers, even by simply tweeting a pizza emoji. Why was this digital push so critical for unit economics? Because digital orders carry significantly higher profit margins. When a customer orders through an app instead of calling over the phone, 3 powerful financial things happen simultaneously. First, order accuracy goes to near 100%, eliminating costly remake errors in the kitchen. Second, labor costs plummet because kitchen staff don't have to spend 3 minutes taking an order over a noisy phone line. Third, and most importantly, the algorithm systematically upsells the customer. An employee on the phone might forget to ask, "Do you want extra cheese or garlic knots with that?" The app never forgets. Average order value shot up by 15 to 20% on digital platforms compared to phone orders. Suddenly, the unit economics for owners like Dave flipped upside down. More volume, higher ticket sizes, lower labor friction, and higher net profit. By 2015, over 50% of all Domino's orders were coming through digital channels, leaving competitors like Pizza Hut and Papa John's scrambling to catch up. Domino's had successfully built a tech moat that was almost impossible to replicate quickly. And yet, as digital orders skyrocketed, a new, dangerous threat emerged on the horizon, one that threatened to destroy their entire delivery monopoly. Third-party food delivery platforms, apps like DoorDash, Uber Eats, and Grubhub. These tech giants swept through the restaurant industry, promising massive reach in exchange for massive commissions, often taking 20 to 30% off every order. Unindependent pizzerias jumped on board, sacrificing their margins just to stay visible.